All right, if you're in captive finance, you know the shift to IFRS 9 was a pretty big deal. It completely changed the game. So today, we're going to pull back the curtain on its core, the expected credit loss model, and really dig into what it means for your auto loans, leases, and dealer receivables. Okay, so this slide really says it all. The old way, the incurred loss model, that was like driving while only looking in the rearview mirror. You'd only book a loss after the crash already happened. The new ECL model, well, it flips that script entirely. It's proactive. It forces us to look through the windshield to actually predict and save for the risks we see coming down the road. It's a massive change in mindset. So here's our game plan. First, we'll nail down this new view of risk. Then we'll dive into the mechanics, the 3 stages, and the formula that drives it all. Then, and this is a big one, we'll talk about the difference between credit and fraud risk, a distinction that trips up a lot of people. And we'll wrap it all up with a simple playbook you can take back to your team. Right, so why is this shift from incurred to expected losses such a big deal for captive finance? Well, think about your typical 5-year auto loan. So much can happen in that time, right? Interest rates, unemployment, even gas prices, they can all swing wildly. This new model makes us account for all that potential chaos from day one, which makes our provisions for loss way more realistic and dynamic. Okay, here's the textbook definition, but I want you to focus on just 2 words here: reasonable forecasts. That's what changed everything. It's not enough to just look at your old data anymore. Now, you actually have to build models that project things like future GDP growth or unemployment rates. It's a whole new level of sophistication, and frankly, a much bigger challenge. So, to handle all this new complexity, IFRS 9 gives us a framework. The idea is that every single loan, every lease on your books, has to be sorted into one of 3 buckets, or stages, based on its credit risk. Let's see how that works. Now pay close attention to the huge jump between stage 1 and stage 2. When a loan is healthy, it's in stage 1. You only have to set aside enough to cover 12 months of expected losses. But the second it shows a significant increase in credit risk, or a SICR, it jumps to stage 2. This could be a customer going 30 days past due, for example. And look what happens to the provision. It explodes from a 12-month calculation to one that covers the entire lifetime of the loan. That is a massive hit to your balance sheet, and it happens in an instant. And this just shows you that journey. You start in the green, stage 1, with a small provision. Then some trigger event happens, that SICR we talked about, and bam, you're instantly in stage 2, with a much, much bigger provision. This is the core engine of IFRS 9. It forces you to recognize risk the moment it appears, way before a loan actually defaults. All right, so how do we actually calculate all these numbers? That brings us to the math. Let's pop the hood and look at the engine behind the entire ECL model. Don't worry, we'll keep it simple. And here it is. It looks simple enough, right? Expected credit loss equals PD times LGD times EAD. That's probability of default, loss given default, and exposure at default. These 3 things are the absolute building blocks for everything we do in IFRS 9. First up is PD, probability of default. It's basically asking, what are the odds that this borrower is going to stop paying us? For a healthy stage 1 loan, we're looking at those odds over the next 12 months. But for a riskier stage 2 loan, it's over the entire life of the asset. And remember, this has to factor in our economic forecasts, not just old data. Next up, LGD, or loss given default. So if the borrower does default, how much money are we actually out? For a captive auto lender, this is where you factor in things like how much you'll get for the car at auction minus all the cost to repossess it and sell it. It's your net loss. And the last piece of the puzzle is EAD, exposure at default. This one's easy. It's just the total amount of money on the line, the outstanding loan balance plus interest, at the exact moment the customer defaults. It's the total number you stand to lose. So how does this all come together with those reasonable forecasts we mentioned? Well, you don't just calculate one ECL number. You actually have to calculate it for several different possible futures. You'll have your base case, a pessimistic downside case, like a recession, and an optimistic upside case. Your final number is a weighted average of all 3, just like you see here. Okay, we've got the core model down, but now we need to talk about a really common mistake, a major pitfall that can get your company into some serious trouble if you're not careful. So let me just ask you this. You've gone to all the trouble to build this amazing model with PD, LGD, and EAD. You're forecasting the economy. Does that mean you've accounted for every single way you can lose money on a contract? The answer might surprise you. It's a big no. And here's why. The ECL model is built for credit risk. That's the risk that a perfectly real customer, for whatever reason, just can't or won't pay you back. Fraud risk is a totally different beast. That's not about inability to pay, it's about intentional deception from the start, fake pay stubs, or even phantom contracts where the card doesn't exist. It isn't a default, it's a crime. So here is the absolute key takeaway. You cannot, under any circumstances, include your expected fraud losses inside your IFRS 9 ECL calculation. They have to be handled under a completely separate accounting standard, IAS 37. That means you need different processes to track, measure, and provision for them. Mixing these two up is a serious compliance error. Okay, we've covered a lot of ground. So how do we put this all into action? Let's boil it all down into a final, simple playbook with the key takeaways you and your team need to remember. All right, here's your cheat sheet. First, remember it's all about looking forward, built on that PD times LGD times EAD formula. Second, it's all about the 3 stages, and that significant increase in credit risk is the key trigger to watch. Third, your model has to use multiple economic scenarios, not just one. Fourth, and let's just hammer this home one more time, fraud risk is not credit risk. It has its own home under IAS 37. Keep them separate. And finally, you have to constantly check your models and be super clear about how they work. That's how you stay compliant. And I'll just leave you with this final thought. IFRS 9 forces us all to build these incredibly powerful predictive models. So the real question isn't just about accounting compliance, it's about strategy. Now that you have this amazing crystal ball that can help predict future performance, what are you going to do with that insight to make smarter, better business decisions?